Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Cotati City Council and a successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. And we're going to start with a call to order and a roll call.
Councilmember Savage.
Present.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Here.
Mayor Lemus.
Here.
Councilmember Sparks.
Here, and I need to state that I'm recovering from surgery and attending from Zoom because I'm not able to sit upright for long periods.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We're moving on to approval of minutes and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and are adopted under this agenda. This is for the regular meeting, the minutes for the regular meeting of May 12, 2026. Is there any corrections or questions from council? No? Okay. So we'll go to public comment on that, and we'll go to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the room that would like to make public comment on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, could bring it back to council. Do we have a motion?
Oh, real quick, sorry. I didn't jump in fast enough. In the two records of votes, it calls me the mayor. So can we correct that to council member? Other than that,
Okay,
I'm good to go. So move to approve with that change.
okay, thank you.
Second, with that change.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And next on our item, we have a proclamation proclaiming the month of June 2026 at Pride Month, and we have Councilmember Savage just presenting that resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. I'll be reading the proclamation, and we are going to acknowledge an organization in our community, the LGBTQ+ Connection, out of Santa Rosa for Sonoma County. And here tonight representing them is Joy Bessanen. And Joy, what I'll do is read the proclamation first, and then you can come up and join us at the podium and give us a few comments and remarks on your organization. And then if it's okay, we'd like to come down and take a photo with you after that. Okay, great. So the proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cotati proclaiming the month of June 2026 as Pride Month. Whereas Cotati's LGBTQ+ community is comprised of individuals, families, and allies who are an integral part of the fabric of our city and who demonstrate pride and commitment in our city throughout the year by virtue of their contributions to its economy, culture, and quality of life. And whereas the LGBTQ+ community has much to celebrate in terms of business and professional achievements, artistic expression, political involvement, community activities, and life-affirming family relationships, and are a vital part of our Sonoma County culture. And whereas the City of Cotati and the LGBTQ+ community of Sonoma County continue to support, encourage diversity in the workplace and throughout the community. And whereas the city is proud of its skilled, talented, and dedicated employees, including the LGBTQ+ community who work tirelessly to provide services to the people of Cotati. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this day, the 26th of May, 2026, at the City Council of the City of Cotati, hereby celebrates the month of June 2026 as Pride Month.
Hello everyone, my name is Joy Bessanen and I'm the Youth Advocate for LGBTQ Connection Sonoma. I am honored to accept this proclamation on behalf of my amazing team, who all contribute immensely and wholeheartedly to our mission of serving the diverse LGBTQIA+ community in Sonoma County. Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Thank you to John Savage for being the lead of communication and organizing this proclamation, and thank you to the Cotati City Council for this recognition. This proclamation means more than words can say. It reflects our commitment to rooting our work in intersectionality, intentionality, cultural awareness, and community collaboration. This proclamation reflects the work we are doing inside a channel of local organizations who are also doing incredible work to uplift minority and at-risk communities. It reflects our commitment to centering the voices of marginalized members of our community through an intersectional and trauma-informed approach. The recent political climate and current administration have made an effort to be detrimental to our local LGBTQ communities and LGBTQ communities at large. In times like these, recognition for the LGBTQ community is important and highly valued. When we can come together and be proud of ourselves and each other, it is nothing to be taken for granted. When our humanity and visibility is faced with scrutiny and vitriol, moments when we can come together and celebrate our achievements is our own form of resistance. We must keep feeling joy and appreciate the little and big steps we make toward a better future ahead. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Now, thank you. If you don't mind, we'll come up and take a picture with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, these are my team members.
Just in time.
Yeah, you stand up here and do your.
Okay.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. And I do have one follow-up comment. Our Pride flag raising ceremony will be Thursday, the 11th of June at 11 a.m. here in front of City Hall.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we will open up this item for public comment, and we'll start in the room. Is there anyone in the room that wanted to make public comment on the proclamation? Okay, we'll open it up to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Once again, Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands on Zoom, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the next item. We have agenda review. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. So just one change, the scheduled closed session, this is item 11A, is not needed tonight, so we'll just cancel or postpone that item. Other than that, no other changes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So we'll open that up to public comment because it said agenda and there was a change. Is there anyone in the room that wants to make a public comment on the change to the agenda? Not seeing any, we'll go to Zoom.
Once again, Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands on Zoom, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. Next item, citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any item listed on the consent calendar or any matter not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2025-03, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, the timer indicator lights will display yellow when there are 30 seconds remaining and red when time has expired. So with that, is there any comments for citizen business or consent calendar items? And we'll start in the room. Seeing none, we'll go to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon if you'd like to make a public comment on this item. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment. Okay,
Thank you. So we'll move on to consent calendar items. And I do need to recuse myself from one consent calendar item. I'm sorry, not the consent calendar. It was a regular item. Okay. Okay, consent calendar. So we have 3 items in the consent calendar. We have a resolution approving the purchase and installation of fixed generators at the Quail Hollow and New Century Sewer lift stations. We have B, which is approving a construction contract with Granite Construction for the LaSalle Avenue valve replacement project, and approval of a professional services agreement with Harris and Associates to design the 2026-2027 pavement preservation project. So any questions or comments?
Move to approve the consent calendar?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, that passes. And now we'll move on to direction on future agenda items. Is there anyone have a future agenda item? Okay, nothing right now? Okay, we'll move forward to regular agenda items. Okay, so there's 3 items on here, and so I think what I'll do is can we move something up or no? Not yet. Okay, I'll just,
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to, council's welcome to if they would like to move items around, but
okay.
there's no staff is not proposing any changes.
Okay. So if I could request that we move up 8C, which is discuss Cal City's request for letters opposing AB 1383 and SB 866, and if that's okay with everybody, because I need to recuse myself from that. On AB 1383, I've had discussions with firefighters around Pepra, and so I want to recuse myself from that item. So if it's okay with you, then we can move that one up, and I can recuse myself and come back for the rest of them. And then I'll turn it over to the vice mayor, and I'll step out of the room. Okay. Okay.
Okay, can we have a staff report on this item, please?
Okay, so this is 2 letters that are 2 requests that we received from Cal Cities. There's 2 pieces of legislation that are currently making their way through the legislature, AB 1383 and SB 866. So just briefly, AB 1383 is Cal Cities is requesting a position of opposition to the Public Employees Retirement Benefits Bill, and this would, if this bill were to be signed into law, it would increase the pensionable compensation cap for Pepra public employees. It would reduce the retirement age for public safety employees from 57 to 55, applied prospectively, creates a new 4th safety tier establishing 3% at 55 formula that is prospective and subject to collective bargaining, and then allows local agencies to adjust their local pension formulas prospectively, providing them with the authority to modify benefit structures going forward. AB 1383 has passed through the Assembly and has been referred to the Senate Committee on Labor, Public Employment, and Retirement. It's expected to be heard in June, so it was born in the Assembly, it's made its way through the Assembly, it's in the Senate now, just starting to go through committees. And I'll just pause for a second if anyone has any questions on that before I go to the next bill. No? Okay, so Senate Bill 866, it's related to housing element mandates, and Cal Cities, again, is requesting a position of opposition on this. So SB 866 would require all but 14 cities to add extensive homelessness reporting to their housing elements. SB 866 targets cities without direct access to homelessness funding, placing extensive new reporting burdens on cities with the fewest resources. So since 2019, HAP has provided state funding to the 14 largest cities, all 58 counties, and the 44 continuums of care. So that leaves the other 469 cities in California that don't get any direct state funding for these programs. So to receive funding, HAP recipients must submit regional plans that include system performance metrics. SB 866 would impose the same performance metric as a new housing element requirement only for those cities that do not receive HAP funding. So kind of the worst of both worlds, no money and extra reporting. That the cities that do get the money have the benefit of at least being funded to do that reporting work. This SB 866 is eligible for a floor vote at any time, so this is a Senate bill. So it hasn't left the Senate yet, but it's going to be up for a vote soon, and then if it succeeds, it'll pass to the Assembly and then go into committee there. It's the current status as of at least the end of last week. I'll just stop there, but I'm happy to answer any questions if the council has any.
Any questions? I guess no questions. Then I will open this up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this item in the audience? Seeing no one jump up, Kevin, could you check with our Zoom attendees, please?
Yes, thank you. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a comment on this item. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment.
Thank you so much. Then I would be looking for a motion.
Just a comment, in our Sonoma County legislative meetings, these have been two of the items that have been talked about that Cal Cities has been involved in. They have a few more, specific talking points about some of the challenges that this would pose for our cities, but I think Damien's done a good job of covering most of the concerns. So I would make a motion that we send communications opposing both of these bills.
Thank you for that. Do we have a second?
I'd second that.
Okay, motion is second. Kevin, since we have Laura online, could we do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Councilmember Sparks?
Yes.
Councilmember Savage?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
Yes. And let that show 4-0 with the mayor recusing herself. And I believe our finance director is going to get our mayor. Welcome back. Thank you. It's all you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you for that. Okay, so next on our regular agenda item is 8A. We have a discussion on affordable housing impact fees, and I think we have a presentation on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So as was announced, this is a discussion of affordable housing impact fees. I believe we have Carlos and James from Wildan. They were the consultants that assisted in this effort and put together the impact analysis report and comp survey that's attached at the back of the staff report. So this item, this isn't requesting any particular, it's not requesting action. It's not requesting action for adopting fees tonight. It's really just to go over the report, make sure any questions that you have are answered about the report and how it was, the methodology and how it was put together. But also, there are some policy suggestions that are in there, and the staff's looking for some feedback on that. The thought is that with feedback on the policy recommendations or suggestions, that we would come back at a future meeting with a firmed up both policy recommendation and also a fee recommendation. And one of the things we were thinking of doing is putting together these impact fees with the other impact fees that are applicable in different types of development, bring it back so the council can see the entire context of fees and what that looks like on a development. And I just think, especially with all the recent fee work that the council has done, as you know, we are, at least as of the end of last year, we were the first jurisdiction in Sonoma County to have fully updated fees, compliant with the latest state laws around impact fees. So there's been a lot of fee work lately, and I think it would be helpful after tonight just to come back one more time, take a step back and look at all the fees and kind of how they stack up, so to speak, on various types of development. I think it would be informative, both in terms of finalizing policy, but also total fee burden on projects. So on the item before you tonight, this is affordable housing fees, and so it's basically split into two programs. There's a affordable housing, like an inclusionary fee, so that's residentially applied. So when there's residential projects of certain thresholds that are set by policy, the fees could apply. Currently, Cotati has a 9-unit threshold, so projects that are 9 units or less can, what they call fee out, basically pay a fee rather than building it into the project. Bigger projects than that would typically have to do an inclusionary, would have to meet an inclusionary requirement, which means they need to include the affordable housing, deed-restricted affordable housing, into the project. The only sort of, kind of nuance on that is that for fractional units, when you round down, you can round down and pay a fee for that part of it. That's how our current fee's set up. And I'll go through some of the other cities that are around us. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But that's the affordable housing side. The other side of the occasion of this equation is linkage fees. And so linkage fees are affordable housing fees that are applied to new commercial development or new non-residential. And that includes commercial, office, and industrial, broadly referred to as just non-residential types of development. And the intent behind both of those is, these fees are not impact fees in a conventional sense, where a lot of the impact fees that we reviewed last year were primarily infrastructure impact fees. So there's an impact to the infrastructure. That's sort of the conventional impact fee. This is more of like a public good type impact fee, where there's a policy need to create a fee that, in this case, creates affordable housing. So the Nexus study that's attached, basically on the affordable housing, like the inclusionary side, they looked at they just kind of real brief overview. They looked at local market rents and the ability of people to afford those rents. They developed some prototypes. So there's a rental prototype and a for sale prototype. The rental prototype is a 2-bed, 1-bath unit. The for sale prototype is a 3-bed, 2-bath unit. 1654 square feet for the for sale and 902 square feet for the rental is what the prototype was for both of those types. So basically, they would, they look at, what it takes to, what the income level it is that's required to afford a market rate unit at these of these types, and they have a hypothetical 100-unit for rental, 100-unit for sale, and the idea is just to come up with a total amount of sort of total income. If you create new units, a total number of income that comes into the community, the number, and then through the M-Plan, there's an M-Plan model that tries to calculate imputed economic effect of these new households coming into the community, and then that generates jobs to support those services, which then generates housing needs, right? The affordable housing needs. And we used costs for the study. We used costs from Saggio Hills and South Park Commons. So these are actual costs of affordable housing projects. That's how the cost per unit were developed. And the overall average was about $822,000 per unit from those two developments. And now, remember, these are affordable housing developments, so they're prevailing wage. They're higher priced, of course, than your market rate unit might be. Your not prevailing wage, sort of general for sale or rental unit would be. And then using the M-Plan output by income category, they determine the financing gap and the maximum fees per square foot for the prototype units. And so each one of these, for the for rents and the for sales, they're going to have some amount of rent they can afford, which finances some of the finance for the construction of these projects. So really what they're trying to determine is what's the net overall, like what's the net gap in money. And for rent, it averaged about $178,000 per unit, which is about $197 per square foot with the prototype model. And then for sales, $319,000 per unit, or about $193 per square foot. So that's just a real quick overview on that part of the report. The other part was commercial linkage fees. And again, here they established prototypes, and in this case, it was 100,000 square foot prototypes for each of the different non-residential types, so commercial, office, and industrial. They use some economic data to estimate the number of workers in these new commercial spaces. And then from that, you estimate the number of workers, household incomes, calculating the affordability gaps again, and then calculating the linkage fees. So in this case, commercial And these, again, are maximums. Commercial linkage fee was $81 per square foot, office $83 per square foot, and industrial at $37 per square foot. On page, it's like page 3 of the staff report, or it's 62, page 62 of the packet. There's a table in there with the different, going back to the inclusionary housing fees in the policies. There's a table in there that summarizes it. There's also a more comprehensive table at the back after the Affordable Housing Nexus study. But these are the comp jurisdictions that were used. So American Canyon, just to kind of go over the policy side of things now. So American Canyon, they don't charge any fees for the smaller developments. So it looks like many of these different communities used under the Subdivision Map Act. There's a parcel map size, which is 2 to 4 units, and then there's a tentative map or a map, like a subdivision map size, which is 5 or more units. So it's a legal thing in terms of map sizes, and they appeared to use that as the threshold in many of these communities. But American Canyon used it, so 1 to 4 units, there's no fee requirement, so they don't have to pay anything, they don't have to build anything. 5 or more units, they're required to build 10%. Inclusionary, they also are able to use alternative methods, which is defined in their code, or potentially pay an inclusionary fee. Cloverdale doesn't have any program, any sort of affordable housing program, so there's 0. Cotati, as I mentioned earlier, 1 to 9, we allow developers to pay a fee. 10 or more, they need to build at 15%. There is an alternative method program. I don't see it used very often. It's mostly around donation of land or offsite construction. But the one policy change, as you might recall, that we've made more recently is we used to have a third, and now we allow it to be more flexible to meet our RHNA needs at any given time. Healdsburg has, so again, 1 to 4 units, they can just pay a fee. 5 or more, they need to build to 20% because they're Healdsburg. I guess they can do that. Petaluma, 1 to 4 units they don't have any requirement, but 5 or more units, they need to build to 15%, pay a fee, or they can use an alternative method. So Runner Park, up to 50 units, they can pay a fee, but they have to, 51 or more, they have to build inclusionary at 15%, or use an alternative method. And then Santa Rosa, in the table it says it varies by location, but really what that is they have so in general in Santa Rosa, they have a 5 to 10% inclusionary requirement. So it depends in Santa Rosa, it depends on the level of affordability. So the more affordable, the lower the percent. So like on the 5% side would be like the very low. If you do moderate, you have to do 10. And so it's like, it's a sliding scale based on the level of affordability. In their downtown, so they also have, and I've seen this in other communities around the state, but they have where they're trying to encourage more development. In their downtown, they have a different requirement in their downtown area. So they have a 3 to 5% requirement in their downtown, as opposed to their general 5 to 10% baseline outside of the downtown area. For whatever reason, Santa Rosa picked 6 or less units, they can pay a fee. But over 6, they have to include it in the project. Sebastopol, 0 to 4 units, there's no requirement. 5 or more, they need to build to 15%. In Windsor, 0 to 4, there's no requirement. But 5 or more, they can pay a fee or build to 10%. And so you'll also see, just kind of going over some different thresholds, there's basically fee amounts and structures, there's fee threshold, and there's alternative methods. There's also this nuance I mentioned where there can be differences geographically. There's other ways to kind of to slice and dice it, but basically in those 3 categories, fee amount and structure, fee threshold, and alternative methods. So some of the suggestions in the staff report for feedback from the council tonight are On the for sale side, there wasn't any immediate staff recommendation to change the threshold, our current threshold, which is at 9 right now. In discussions internally, we thought it'd be worth considering at least increasing the threshold on the for rent side, though. The difference being that on the for sale side, the developer will build the unit and then just hand the keys to us, basically, and it goes to the Housing Land Trust. There's no ongoing obligation from the builder aside from just building the unit. And then on the rental side, though, many of the rental projects are build and hold, so that developer holds it in the long term. And then they have to, for the suggestion here is increase the threshold to 20. And the reason why is because we've just observed in conversations with our smaller developers, they often don't have the, it's a challenge for them. They don't always have the means to be able to stand up and run an ongoing affordable housing program within these small affordable rental units projects. And 20 based on anecdotal kind of conversations with developers, that might be a good sort of break point for when developers have big enough projects that they kind of know how to run those kind of programs, and it's not so painful to try to hold their hands and kind of get it up and running. Another potential option right now is, as I mentioned earlier, for us, people can fee fractional units provided they don't round up. So right now, if it's 0.5 or more, they round up and you have to create the inclusionary unit. If it's less than 0.5, they can pay the fee for the fractional unit. The suggestion for discussion is that fractional units can just pay a fee rather than rounding up, because if it does round up, it creates an additional cost obligation to the developer. And so based on the discussion tonight, as I mentioned kind of briefly earlier, the plan was to come back with various prototypes with all the fees, not just the affordable housing fees, but all of the different impact fees, and not even all of ours. So all of ours, but also the fire district fee, which is technically ours, but it's the fire district, and the school fees. So have those all put together in various examples that you can see what the total looks like. And I think that would be helpful to sort of balancing policy needs versus total costs and what, hopefully would be feasible and a total fee burden. We could also look at, so like, as I mentioned earlier, Santa Rosa does, and it's not just Santa Rosa, I've seen it in other communities where they change their impact fees, and it's not even affordable, but just impact fees generally in certain geographic areas if there's a desire to incentivize, based on what the total fee load looks like, to incentivize certain areas over others. Like Santa Rosa does the downtown. I've seen similar areas where, other communities want to incentivize development in certain geographic areas. That could be something to consider as well. There are certain geographic areas we want to look at, but we can, I'll bring it up again when we come back with the fee examples, because you'd have more information to have that conversation at that time. But that's something to consider potentially. And then on the linkage fees, so on the commercial side, in the staff report, there's a suggestion to consider eliminating commercial and office fees and linkage fees. And the primary thinking there is that we don't get a lot of commercial. Commercial means retail, basically. So retail and office, and we've been trying to, especially in mixed-use projects, we've been trying to leverage the housing to get the commercial that the developer doesn't want to include. So it just seems counter to that policy goal by charging a fee then on the commercial side. And we don't get that much anyway in terms of square footage. We don't expect to. So we wouldn't collect that much money in that program anyhow. If there was a desire to potentially keep some impact fee, the thinking there is that maybe on the industrial side, we could potentially keep some lower fee, maybe more in line with some of our neighboring communities. Because industrial, even though we don't have a lot of industrial land, they do tend to be very big developments. So on a square footage basis, you could collect a relatively meaningful fee on those kind of developments. The last project that the last significant project that we've had that collected a commercial or non-residential linkage fee was the Pods Warehouse out on the end of Blodgett. Aside from that, we haven't had a whole lot of new construction recently. It's been a bit. So I'll pause there. But as I mentioned, we have Carlos and James here with Wildan to answer questions about the impact fee nexus study if you have any more specific questions on that. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss some of the policy suggestions in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Do we have questions from City Council first? Councilmember?
Just wanted whether we have any evidence or inkling that Cotati's fees are keeping people from building here? I imagine that's hard to know, but.
Yeah, it is difficult to know. I've been kind of, or I should say collectively, we've been kind of going down a rabbit hole lately, which is why, trying to suss that out. But there's been a lot of academic studies on that. UC Berkeley has quite a few that we're in the midst of going through right now to better understand. A lot of these studies generated some of the legislative proposals that have gone to the state legislature. And so some of them have been, like, which was mentioned in the staff report, I think it was AB 602, which did a lot of work on like transparency, moving to square footage based. These are some of the recommendations out of these policy papers that have been done. But in terms of total fees, it's more difficult. I will say that, based on the studies that have looked at it, just generally, and I'll get back to your specific question, Councilmember Ford, but when they've looked at various communities around the state, they've seen anywhere from like 6% to almost 20% of the median home price being fees and service fees. So these are impact fees and also like building and planning, engineering fees. When I talk to other consultants that work with private and public partners, they tend to say, and this is a really rough, rule of thumb, they tend to say like 50,000 per unit is what they see as sort of almost like a threshold that if you get more than that significantly, then you become considered an expensive community to develop in, and then if you're less, of course, you'd be a less expensive community to develop in. So on the single family side, like in some of these policy papers, the fees, like for single family in different communities around the state, it's anywhere from like $21,000 a unit, like that was LA County, up to like $157,000 per single family unit. That's like Fremont, right? And then multifamily, it's like $12,000 per unit to $75,000 per unit. Again, the same community mix. So we're trying to understand sort of the big picture globally. And to answer your question specifically in the community, I've heard, the only thing that I've heard specifically about the fees that we have is that the park fee was very high. Whether it stops the development really depends on the local economic factors, because it's only one piece of many pieces that go into a development. But I haven't, aside from that one comment, I haven't heard anything specific about our fee stopping a project. It's the overall cost that you usually hear, and it's not any one thing. But this, of course, is just an ingredient in the overall mix. So the suggestion was that we come back with a much deeper dive on that kind of sort of that question to understand how all these fees stack up and what that looks like overall. I don't know that it'll ever be a totally crystal clear answer, but that's why the legislature's been struggling with that same. Yeah, so and actually, one of the legislative proposals that didn't go anywhere, there was a couple. One tried to cap impact fees at 12% of the median home prices in that area. This was a proposal from Grayson. This is a legislator out of the East Bay. And that was, it's kind of funny because the UC Berkeley policy papers, they say, well, the policy, the ranges we've seen are 6 to 18. So he apparently just said, well, I'm going right down the middle with 12%. And not a very scientific approach, but it's something that I think it's hard to apply a statewide policy to because it's so localized. The other sort of ingredient in all this and I'll stop after this because I think you want to go into other questions, but is, so school impact fees, they were actually set by statute, and then they were allowed to escalate from there. So there was a sort of I want to say arbitrary, but it probably wasn't arbitrary. It was probably based on some sort of analysis. But the state legislature in statute set a per square foot fee and said this is where you're starting in, I think, the year 2000, and then they could escalate by CPI after that. So I presume that's how our school district does it. And I'm not suggesting that we do that. It's just, I think, that's what the legislature was going back to the well on that approach, which was unsuccessful because it's a much more complicated issue than just that. That I think communities just have to understand their local context and try to set it within that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have a question from Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I had a question about the proposal to raise the threshold to 20 units for rental units, to have to build rather than paying the in lieu fee. I remember we had some previous discussion in our other housing policy about the fact that removing, we were contemplating a, sorry, I'm struggling to remember the wording exactly, but we're contemplating that developers could convert rental units to for sale units and lifting the prohibition on that because it would make the financing a little bit easier, that sometimes banks would look at that as a risky thing if the developer wasn't allowed to convert to sale units. So my question is, if we were to go ahead with raising the cap to 20 units for rental, and then a project was in distress somehow and had to be converted to for sale units, would there be any mechanism for us to require, if they've already paid, at what point would they pay the affordable housing fee? And if they hadn't paid the fee already, would it be possible to require some of those units to be deed restricted if it was converted to for sale?
Thank you, Councilmember Sparks. Yeah, the city would have an opportunity generally because for rent units, when they originally get entitled, don't include a subdivision, so they're not able to be sold individually. And so if someone were to come back and put a subdivision on top of an existing multifamily project, that discretionary process would allow us to condition them to pay the delta between what the impact fees were for multifamily versus what is now being paid for or required for single family, if there is a difference. Or the city could apply an inclusionary housing requirement to that subdivision to say, when your project was approved, you did not require inclusionary housing to be constructed. As a component of this approval, we're requiring you to meet the city's 15% threshold for projects of this size. So we would have
Okay.
a bite at the apple, so to speak.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, this concept and getting ourselves in line with others sounds great, but as you pointed out, without seeing the full load on a project, it's kind of hard to determine whether or not we're way out of line or not. I mean, I feel like we need to see, here's the base, and here's what the school adds on, and here's what fire department adds on, and here what we add on, and whoever else adds on, so that we can kind of in context, because as you pointed out, we really don't have any control over the fees from others. And it would not be fair to our constituents to have to make up that difference if, say, the others are out of control and raising theirs, for us to put that impact on the rest of the citizens for the services we provide. So, but without that, it's sort of hard to kind of put it in context. It feels out of context, so generally sounds great, but it feels out of context.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Just looking at the linkage fees and kind of where the maximums are set, I mean, ours look pretty minimal in that 5 to 6% range. I guess, again, is that kind of where our other cities are with their linkage fees as well? Or are we substantially lower or higher in linkage fees? I didn't see a chart for the linkage fee comparison.
Yeah, there's a little bit of text around it, and then at the back of the impact fee nexus study, there is a linkage. It's this last table on page 113 of 181, I believe. So it depends on, obviously it depends on the community. So we have, the communities we compared to, Cloverdale, Healdsburg, and Windsor don't have any linkage fee.
I mean, this is an interesting question, just,
Yeah.
You look at the new apartments that are going up at Petaluma North Smart Station, like less than a year after they opened up, and then we've been setting 25 years here with our housing and our train station. I mean, what drives that decision? I mean, is it the deep pockets that the developers have, that they're able to self-finance, or is it some difference in the structure between the two municipalities?
I think, Noah can add on to this too, but yeah, I will just say that it's usually a combination of many factors. So we have had developers that just are, they're not builders, they're just entitlement, basically paper developers, and so that's been sort of part of the delay. It definitely does help to get a developer, that builder, that actually has access to capital already, because they usually can move faster than, in our case, someone that entitles it and then has to look for a buyer to build it, which is what happened here in the train depot area. And then, aside from that, our fees are not out of line with Petaluma or anything. I will say the other thing that I think we run into fairly consistently is when you have developers that come into the area, they tend to think bigger communities. We just sort of aren't on their radar necessarily. And so that's also part of it, where they just think, well, we're coming to Sonoma County, so we're doing, if we're doing something fancy, we're going to Healdsburg, or we're near Sonoma, and then otherwise we're in Santa Rosa, Petaluma, maybe Rohnert Park. But we're just not as well known as what I hear sometimes, So they're like, oh, well, thank you for letting us know about Cotati. We'll take a harder look at, the community, but it just is something that they don't really, they don't see when they come in to develop here. But I don't know if you have anything else.
The only thing I would add too is that, the saying all real estate is local is really true. And Petaluma benefits from their proximity to San Francisco. They're a little bit more influenced by almost the Marin housing market. So their desirability and price point's a little higher than ours. And so obviously real estate's a business, construction, price per square foot. And one of the challenges we have in the North Bay is our costs are kind of Bay Area costs, but then our sales prices and our rents are secondary tier in that Bay Area price point. So we have a challenge to kind of, the revenues that come in don't always cover all the costs associated with development. But I will say Santero is also a unique situation, given that the specific plan that was originally written essentially envisioned an economy that never materialized, the whole Telecom Valley idea that was going to grow here. And that was a kind of a unique challenge, I think, to Santero specifically.
Okay, Vice Mayor, no comment?
The other thing, John, that I've heard from some folks is we happen to, I think Damien alluded to it, we happen to have properties that were really bought by investors, and they hope to, like cash in. And so they're really not developers, whereas some of these other areas, a developer comes in and buys it. He wants to get in, he wants to get out, he wants to make his money and move on to the next development. We happen to have a lot of properties where there were an investor, and they keep hoping that they're going to make more and more and more, and it hasn't worked out. And that is a little unique for what we have that others don't have.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so I agree. I think I would like to see like a nexus between fee changes and development, and examples of that. One of the things that when I go around and talk to people, our policies, we've really changed them so it's easier for developers to come in. So invite developers to come here to Cotati as much as they can. But for example, the housing over at the villages change hands, right, between one developer to a local developer that has other projects in the works, so they can't work on that one. So yeah, I also would like to see any kind of changes here, kind of hopefully reflect some future development. So, yeah. Any other comments before? Yes. Okay, so then we'll go ahead and go to public comment. And is there anyone in the room that would like to make public comment first on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to the council. Councilmember Ford?
Sure, a couple things. So first, I just want to point out that recovering such a small fraction of the need or impact is a hard pill to swallow. Like, this is the impact on the community when somebody creates jobs here but doesn't fund what's necessary for them to live here is huge. And so that's both on the commercial side, and I'm a little less clear on the residential fee methodology, but we need the affordable housing. And so if I understand our current formula, even changing the residential fee to the upper end of the staff $3 to $7 a square foot recommendation would be a huge cut compared to our current fee process, at least if I made some guesses on sales prices. And so that makes me nervous. I want to make sure we don't get into a race to the bottom with our neighboring communities. The linkage fees, I certainly don't want to peg to Rohnert Park. Like, the recommendation was $1, none on office retail and less than $1 on industrial, and that feels like a race to the bottom there. Like, we're trying to compete with other jurisdictions by reducing our costs to below theirs, whereas Santa Rosa and Petaluma are both up around $3 a square foot. And so I would rather not do that. That's going to be my current bent, is to try to stay in line, not undercut other jurisdictions. I agree, Healdsburg is an outlier in terms of what they can charge, and the different methodologies that all the cities use for their housing, for their affordable housing fee makes it hard to compare. But I don't think we're in the same market as American Canyon either, so I don't want to use them as a benchmark. I think Petaluma and Santa Rosa and Rohnert Park are our main sort of benchmarks. I'm fine. I think we should go to a per square foot fee. I'd be fine with changing the threshold for being able to pay out to 20 for rental projects. I think 9 is working fine for the for sale projects, because that's basically where it's just barely above where you have to build a unit rather than feeing out the partial anyway. So I think 9 works fine. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go to Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I'm also okay with upping the limit on the rental properties. Also moving to a square footage based fee. I'm sort of curious what other people on the council think about removing a fee on 1 to 4 units. I know that a lot of our neighboring jurisdictions have no requirement. I'm a little skeptical of going that direction because it seems to favor one-off kind of single-family developments, put it not on quite an equal footing with maybe more like cottage housing type of developments. So I'm just sort of curious what people think about that. I'm not quite sure what I think about that yet. But yeah, I also agree with what Councilmember Harvey said previously about, sorry, Vice Mayor Harvey, about trying to see all of the fees like in their totality when this comes back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Vice Mayor? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I had one other thing I'd written
Yeah.
down that I forgot
Yeah,
to
go
say,
ahead.
which is, given that we're so far below what the impact study would make possible, I would love it if we could build in an automatic CPI adjustment to this without having to do another study. And I don't know if that's difficult or not, but I hope we can figure out a way to do that. Okay.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
I'm open to doing the 1 to 4 units, but with a pay a fee. I'm not really open to having no fee on that because even the little fee that we get, all the little pennies that we get to put in the penny jar, you know, at some point do help us towards some of the affordable housing units. And I agree with Councilmember Sparks that at some point, even single-family homes have to help with making sure that there's affordable housing so that everyone gets a home. So I'd be open to the 1 to 4 with paying a fee, but and I'm okay with the 20 units on the rental, and am open on the linkage fees. There is some, you know, some amount of, I guess, contribution that businesses have to make. We don't have a whole lot, so it's hard to say that, you know, it's going to make a really big difference, but I'm guessing that it was pretty substantial for us to get the pods one when we got that. But again, not knowing exactly how many parcels we have that could do something like that, it may be just wishful thinking to have that there, and we don't really have parcels that can do any of that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, so as far as the feedback, then, what I heard was about building in a CPI adjustment rate, like based on CPI, into the rates. 1 to 4 units, add a fee, and there was 2 people that agreed with that, or 3. 20 units on the rentals, and we're open on the linkage fees, but we want to see kind of what the rates are for all the different.
Can I
Yes.
just add one? So one other question was about the small point about developments that round up. Can they fee out that last unit rather than building a full unit when they really only are responsible for 0.7 of a unit or something like that? Either way is okay with me. I tend to push for, let's include the units in the project, but
You mean round up or round down? Or what?
no, so the question is, so currently, if the formula for a developer says they have to build 8.4 units, then they can pay a fee instead of building that 0.4 unit.
Okay.
But if the formula says they have to build 8.6 units, then they actually have to build 9. There's no
Okay.
way to fee out.
Okay.
So one of the questions in the report is, should we allow them to fee out any fractional
That's a fee, any
fractional
fraction.
units? That'd be okay with me if the staff thinks that would make a difference, if it makes us less competitive, because it sounds like most other jurisdictions allow partial units to fee out, I think.
On fractions, okay.
But I do want to point out also that currently, 1 to 9 units do pay the fee. And so that, I think the staff question was, should we completely exempt 1 to 4 units from fees? And so I'm not hearing support for that.
No, I'm hearing add a fee for 1 to 4 units.
Well, keep the fee, yeah.
Yeah, keep the fee, yeah.
Yeah. Keep the current threshold at 9 for sale,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments?
Oh, there was one more, sorry, I neglected this, but on the alternative methods, there was a staff suggestion in there to look at, so you can pay a fee, depending on the number of units you build, you can pay a fee, you can build inclusionary, or you can do an alternative method, which usually things like land donation, or building in alternative locations, that kind of thing. But for discussion, there was a suggestion to think about, if we have an adopted housing element, it has a variety of housing programs. I mean, potentially, the thought was that if a developer can fund, at least at the equivalent level of what a unit or the fee would be, that they could potentially fund some other program for us that's in the approved housing element.
Ask about that.
Yes.
So are we talking instead of building their inclusionary units, or just for whatever they're already allowed to fee out?
So it would be, I mean, presumably what would happen, I guess it could be for anything, because you can build, you can fee, and then you can do an alternative program, right? So whatever it is would have to come to council for approval, because it would have to be some mix of things that is more attractive than whatever the base program would be.
So are we open to looking at alternatives if it comes up? Is that the question?
Yeah, well, right now, the alternatives, I think, are relatively restricted to what they can be, but, maybe other, so it wouldn't change the structure of you can do A, B, or C. But, anyway.
So I would be fine with expanding the alternative methods in lieu of whatever fee. I wouldn't be supportive at this point of alternative methods in lieu of actually building the inclusionary units, unless the value of the alternative method is the full $822,000 cost of building the unit. I mean, they would have to not meet the fee, they'd have to meet the actual impact if they're going to do something alternative. That's my sense currently.
Yeah.
Other people agree?
I would agree with that, because otherwise they'll just pick the alternative and we'll never get the affordable housing
Okay.
built.
And then we have Councilmember Sparks. Comments?
Yeah, one comment and one question. Just a comment about the previous idea of rounding up, being able to fee out, rounding up. I would be okay with that as long as the square footage fee is set someplace close to what the actual cost would be, because I think if we land on a square footage based fee that's substantially lower than the real cost to build units, then people are going to fee out the roundup every single time, and we'll lose some units. So I'm sort of curious where the fee will land on that. And then just a question about the alternative methods, City Manager, but I'm wondering if you could give an example of a type of program that you could envision being an alternate way, like off the top of your head. Do you have an example or two of that?
Well, maybe like, so like our housing element has rehabilitation and preservation of units. I mean, the traditional thing they would do is donate land or build units somewhere else, but and a rehabilitation preservation would be the more expensive things. I don't know. if you have any
There's also a first-time homebuyer program that's discussed in the housing element. So I think the way this would work, it would be, to fund either one of these, it would be some amount of money that's put into an account specifically that allows us to implement a housing element program. Maybe one that we had not been able to meet a budget contribution to as of yet. That might be an interesting way.
Wouldn't we be able to fund programs like that out of our affordable housing in lieu fund anyway?
Yes.
I mean, if we have the funding to do it. Part of the approach here is trying to continue to meet the policy goal of having inclusionary housing built in projects, but also being able to continue to collect some amount of inclusionary housing fee money for other programs, supporting, like wraparound supporting programs. So, because the fee funds we had historically it takes a long time to build them, so this is a way to allow us to do things like, buy the property downtown for the 120 project. Those are the kind of uses that you can do with the money, but you have to collect it to do it.
Yeah, I would just add one.
I don't. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things that we have discussed at the staff level is trying to find alternative sources of revenue for that fund, because we don't, with the limited amount of development we've had, and then the policy that pushes inclusionary units to be built, there's just not a lot of revenue streams into that fund that then allow us to leverage for our affordable housing, or I'm sorry, our housing element programs. So that is one of the discussion points we've had at staff level, is trying to come up with creative ways to get funds there. And I think what Manager Obid is seeking is whether we have the funds in the pool or the developer directly contributes to cover the cost of a program that we've committed to with the state. Either way, we're achieving the goal.
It's trying to, I mean, we're trying to balance some different policy goals. The main one, of course, is getting the inclusionary housing, because I think that's really what everyone wants at the end of the day. But trying to do it in a way that hopefully gets the projects built, because and that gets into that's just not about this. That's about the total cost of development, which we'll talk about later. But if it doesn't get built, then we don't get the market rate units, we don't get the affordable units, we don't get any inclusionary money, we don't get anything to further that goal. So definitely the bias is more towards inclusionary, unlike you look at a community like Rohnert Park, where they have a 50-unit threshold. And to me, when I see that's such a big difference in threshold, that tells me there's a bias there to, except for the very biggest developments, the bias is to pay the fee. And what that, from a policy perspective, what that results in ultimately over time is you end up with basically market rate developments that don't have much inclusionary or any inclusionary, and then you have 100% affordable projects getting built separately. So, and that's counter to the policy goal that the council has set previously, not trying to create 100% affordable and market rate everywhere else, but trying to drive towards inclusionary. So trying to find that balance of primarily biasing towards inclusionary housing, but also ensuring that the total cost is at a point, hopefully, where the projects move forward, we get the housing, and then in the meantime, we also collect some amount of inclusionary funding to do other programs and from the housing element that are also policy goals. So it's a...
I think I totally, that all makes sense to me. What I don't quite understand is how allowing an alternative that's distinct from just feeing out, because option 1 would be to build the inclusionary, option 2 would be to pay the fee. And then option 3 could be I'm hearing is an alternative to directly fund a housing element program, but we could just do that with money that's paid into the in lieu fee anyway. So I'm not quite understanding how that's substantively different, or why having that as a policy would help us.
Well, I would say sometimes we have, like a developer may have access to a certain piece of property or certain opportunities that we don't have access to, and it would, quite frankly, cost us more to do than maybe they could. And oftentimes, you find in entitlements, they might say, hey, I'll do this, plus I'll throw in another 20% because we're a good, we want to be a good actor in the community. And so it satisfies the goal, but also maybe even adds something that we wouldn't have got if it's purely transactional with, that we go out and we buy with our own inclusionary housing fund.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
I think part of your intent was that the inclusionary fee itself is a smaller amount that we can only put together with other inclusionary fees, whereas the alternative, I think, as Councilmember Ford said, would be a higher amount, but at a different type. So it wouldn't be as small as the inclusionary fee amount. So feeing out is obviously the cheapest way, because you're never going to build anything for that amount of money. Whereas this, as you point out, they might have something else, like another piece of property somewhere that they could trade us, and that value would be more valuable to us than had they just feed out. Isn't that what the difference you're trying to point out with this alternate?
Yeah, and in any of these alternate programs, no developer would get this by right. They would have to come to the council, and the council would have to actually authorize it. Otherwise, they stick to the formula. And, so, and it could be that the policy that the council wants is, if they, right now, what they could do, aside from the land donation, is they could build these units somewhere else in the community, right? They could do that. And that would have presumably a construction cost that would be equivalent to what, we see here in these, in the financial data for the Nexus study. But, the policy could say that if they want to do some alternative program that's not building housing somewhere else, they have to meet some higher number than the inclusionary fee number. I mean, you could potentially have different numbers, I suppose.
Isn't that not too dissimilar to what ended up happening with the project on 116 where they split the lot and they're doing presumably having Burbank do the affordable piece and they're going to do the market rate? Isn't that similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah, it was technically inclusionary, but.
Yeah, I was thinking of that project because they ended up building or committing to build, if they move into construction, about 20 units more than they were required to under the inclusionary housing requirement and the state density bonus law. Just because they needed to get to that size of a project that would actually work for the financing that Burbank had to make the project self-sustaining.
Yeah, so there's other benefits like that can come up if you don't just get the fee, if there's some alternate plan. I mean, there could be, hypothetically. But I think what I'm hearing is that if someone were to do that, the value shouldn't be the fee amount because they can just pay the fee. It should be an equivalent sort of dwelling unit amount.
Okay.
Right.
We have Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, basically, I agree with that. If we're talking alternate to actually building the inclusionary housing, then the value to the city has to exceed the value of the units. It can't have anything to do with the fee, because the fee is nowhere near the impact.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions? I mean, other comments, final comments? Okay. Okay, so I think you got all that, including the alternative methods that we discussed with the fee outs, when we allow and when we don't. But then ultimately, we will decide at the city council.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, which is approval of garbage franchise agreement amendment and term extension with Recology.
All right, so thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight, we have R3 here, as well as Recology. That will, they're not part of the presentation, but as we get into Q&A, they're here to help answer any questions that might come up. So I'll just point out, just as a housekeeping thing, behind the staff report, as you probably noticed, there's a memo from R3 summarizing the recommendations. And then also, there's a rate schedule, which is the current, in effect, rate schedule. And then there's a resolution, and then attached to the resolution is the proposed June 1, 2026 rate schedule. So a little bit of history. In March of 2013, the city entered into a franchise agreement with the Redwood Empire Disposal Company, otherwise known as RED or RADO. And they ran the waste refuse collection franchise until 2017. At the very end of 2017, Recology bought the franchise out, not only from Cotati, but all the different Redwood Empire Disposal franchises in Sonoma County. And at that time, our existing franchise agreement was going to expire in 2023. So just a little walk down memory lane. One of the things at the time, you may recall when Redwood Empire Disposal was in the midst of all that, or maybe, I think it was right before, or maybe shortly after. I forget the exact timing, but they were in trouble with their material recovery facility. It was a mess, and they had regulators all over them, and they were getting enforcement actions. And so one of the first orders of business for Recology was to get in there and to sort of staunch the bleeding, the initial regulatory issues that were happening there. And that was, so this is all, I believe in 2017 when all that was happening, immediately after or maybe it was 2018, right, shortly after, but it was right around that time frame. And that was an initial reported like $8 million just to kind of get things sorted enough to not continue to get fines from the regulatory agencies. And then in early 2024, well, actually, let me not take things out of sequence. So in 2021, so fast forward now to 2021, the city added a new section to our solid waste management ordinance. And this was all about SB 1383, the organics law. And at that time, we amended the franchise agreement that had been in place, essentially as is since 2013. One of the changes, aside from adding the organics collection requirements that was required under state law into the franchise, we also extended the franchise 5 years to June 30, 2028. So that's kind of, from a franchise agreement side, that's where things stand today. Then in a couple years after that, in January of 2024, I think was the official ribbon cutting or opening date, Recology opened their new material recoveries facility on Standish. So that was reportedly a $35 million investment. And it's, I think some of it has been on tours. It's a beautiful facility. And so that's what they had been working on essentially since they took over the franchise, to modernize their, not only the material processing side of things, but also, they also inherited a lot of old equipment from Redwood Empire Disposal, so old collection equipment and a variety of other things they've been in the intervening years upgrading. So that gets us to today. So in June of last year, Recology applied for a detailed rate review, which is allowed under our franchise agreement. So you might know that our franchise agreement currently has the rates are based on a CPI index. It's a subset CPI in the Bay Area, but it's limited to 70% of CPI each year. And so what that does is it sets up a situation where every 3 to 5 years we get into these detailed rate review conversations, because they don't collect enough to cover even inflationary cost increases. So for our customers, what that means is that there's a 3 to 5 year rate jump as we do detailed rate reviews and discover that we're behind in terms of collecting necessary costs to cover the services. And for the detailed rate review that was submitted in June of last year, the initial analysis pointed to a 23.8% increase that they would need to put into effect to get back to a cost recovery position on the franchise. And in subsequent conversations with R3 and Recology, Recology then offered a reduced DR of 20.8%, but basically we're still at 21%. And it was requested to cover the increased cost of operations, including the debt service on equipment and the new material recovery facility that I just mentioned. And then earlier this year, actually in March, the council appointed Vice Mayor Harvey and Councilmember Savage to an ad hoc committee to take a look at some of the initial materials coming out of this conversation with Recology. So what happened early this year was, given the magnitude of the requested rate increase, even after the potential adjustment identified by R3, we were still looking at a situation where the franchise agreement would expire in 2028. So there wasn't a lot of room left, and to really have a conversation about restructuring that in some way. So in internal conversations, we decided that there could be mutual benefit to an extension to the franchise, because there's value to Recology, but there's also value to the city and our residents by allowing enough time to restructure the rates so there's not a rate shock like there would have been if there was a DIR implemented in 1 year. And the other conversation that happened earlier this year was looking at a different way of structuring the CPI increases, because as I mentioned, right now we have a 70% CPI, but that does, what that leads to is this every 3 to 5 year conversation where we need to have a big jump in rates because we've been falling behind. And it's just not at least in staff's opinion, not a very well-functioning way to adjust rates, but also for customers. Customers don't want to see large changes in rates either. So it seemed like a more common sense way to do rate changes in the future. So where we collectively ended up was in the proposed amendment that's before you. It's a fairly focused amendment that's attached, but it's proposing a 10-year extension from 2028 to 2038. It would go in, if it's approved by council, it would go into effect on June 1. It sets if the first 5 years would be fixed rates, so it's a fixed single rates, but it's 98766 in the first 5 years, and then it would go on a CPI +1, but with an overall rate cap of 5%, so it never could exceed 5% in future years. The DIR, the extraordinary rate increases, otherwise known as that would result in detailed rate reviews. They were in this proposed amendment are limited to a maximum of 2 over the term of the agreement, but they only could be requested for a change in law or other major unexpected changes that materially increase ongoing operational expenses. So they have to be unexpected, outside of Recology's control, and it explicitly excludes changes due to the collective bargaining agreement updates that Recology periodically does, equipment purchases, and there's other have to meet the threshold of materiality, as mentioned earlier. So there is I'll just point out that there is also in this amendment a whereas clause that just sets a mutual expectation that the parties will continue to meet and discuss the sort of the modernization of the overall franchise agreement. And so there would be a need to keep the ad hoc still, even after tonight, if the council agrees to the amendment, there still would be a need to keep the ad hoc functional in place, because there will be continuing conversations about the overall franchise agreement. There's things that are just out of date. Like I said, this is basically a 2013 franchise agreement, and things need to be updated. And then the last thing I'll just point out on the financial side is R3 did do various cost modeling of different scenarios. And one of the scenarios that was assumed was if we just did a DRR of like basically 20.8%, and assuming the franchise agreement was extended at that point, but then there was another DIR, 5 years down the road, what that, in a conservative scenario, what that would look like, and that looked to be even more expensive to our customers over the same time period than it would be to have a structured, known rate increase that's in the amendment that's attached. The other option that was discussed early on was, potentially we could just do the 20.8% right now and then put this out to RFP, but at least it's staff's opinion that there's not a significant benefit in doing that, because looking at the communities around us, it's unclear that there would be any sort of significant rate benefit to our customers, and there's a chance that it could be materially worse in terms of cost if we went out to RFP. There's a limited number of players in the market here, and based on the minimal number of complaints that at least we've received here at City Hall, Recology has been a good partner. So, for all those reasons, we just felt that it was a better outcome to stay with Recology, both because of their performance to date, but also because we don't think it would really, it's not likely to lower rates for customers, and may do the opposite if we went out to bid. Plus, whenever you change garbage franchises, it's pretty disruptive to customers as well in terms of the bin collections and the redeployment. It's, I'm sure you read about it in the paper when communities change over to new garbage haulers. It can be kind of exciting for everybody. And then the last thing I'll just add is we did actually ask Recology early on to look into an electric collection vehicle to see what that would look like. And the costs, based on the rate models that we were doing, would be over the term of the franchise, extended franchise, would be about $2 million more over the term. So it is an option potentially, but it wasn't one that we felt, given the other costs involved in the extension, it was worth pursuing at this time at least. So I'll end there, but I'm happy to answer any questions if the council has any.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the council? Questions?
Well, a couple. First, I'm curious whether the members of the ad hoc have anything to add to the report about your discussions about the proposal.
Well, I appreciate all the work, that was done and the negotiating that was done. And what I have to say about this is I was around when we had Ratto, and I had I don't know whether you'd call it pleasure or not pleasure, of seeing what their operation was like. And I have to tell you that the MRF facility that Recology has put together is so much nicer than the rat-infested pile of garbage that was high up over the building when I went and visited Ratto's operation. It was really pretty bad. So I have to say that when they took it over, they took over that contract and that agreement without renegotiating that with us. So if you think about that, that's since 2017, that's 9 years that we really haven't been able to work through and negotiate kind of all the investments that have been made to, really bring our facilities up to what, we would expect a garbage company to have. So I feel like this kind of helps with that catch-up. It's a little hard to stomach, these kind of increases, but I do think that for the last 9 years, we have really not helped kind of contribute to that change in the service that we have been enjoying. So that's kind of my addition to that.
Yes, I agree, and I think getting to a full CPI in the equation is really the key here, I think, moving us forward, and also managing any potential there is for rate shock or the optics of how all that looks. And then I think not going out for the RFP proposal would save time and energy in that regard as well. And there's just not very many people out there to look, and the ones that are not as close, so you'd have additional costs there. And Recology is a good partner for Cotati and the broader Sonoma State and Roanoke Park community. So I think these are, you don't want to present increases at all, but the reality of the situation that we're in, I think this is an appropriate way to manage it.
Can I ask my others? Okay. I'm curious whether in this world there are any limits on extending franchise agreements and not going out to bid. This is an area that gets a lot of newspaper play, so I just want to be.
There aren't any rules about RFPs or requirements. Most agencies do it to just see what's out there, but often, there's only, one game in town, or one of the companies owns a facility that makes it difficult. So, usually the cities work with the consultants to figure out, what kind of market are we dealing with and how likely is it, but there's no RFP requirement.
Okay, thanks. And is it right there hasn't been a detailed rate review since the 2017 change of hands? I thought I remembered some fairly sizable jump not very many years ago.
Well, there was a change with 1383. So when 1383 was implemented, there was a rate change around that because
But it was just tied to the cost of that? It wasn't a review of the entire rate structure?
I think it was the entire rate structure, including that additional cost. So there was
So this 20% 21% is just in those few years since we did that review?
That's my recollection.
Because that's a lot more than 30% of CPI in that time.
Yeah.
So in that case, getting onto a fixed CPI escalator would be good, if that's, if past performance is any indicator.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess I'd like to hear from R3 or Recology, anything about that. Like, where does 21% come from in just a few years if we reviewed the full rate structure back then?
Appreciate the opportunity to speak, Ben. It's a great question, or Councilmember Ford. Part of it's CBA negotiations. So when we go through a detailed rate review, it's generally you look at our costs, so labor, equipment, fuel, electricity, all those types of things, and then you layer on a layer of profit, and then that's where the detailed rate review number comes from. And so when we go through CBA negotiations, you're going to have a significant increase. I think one of those occurred post that detailed rate review. Additionally, as you noted, the CPI increase was at a 70% margin, so you get a reduction in that. And then we had very, very large CPI increases. You had the COVID years and the rest of it that stacked through that, and those were like 7 or 8% inflationary years. And so all those things combined together is one of kind of where this is coming from. Additionally, we haven't really replaced equipment specifically to the city of Cotati in an extended period of time, and garbage trucks are about $1 million a piece, and so we're looking at the need to replace equipment as well. Going forward, this agreement that we have proposed by staff and with R3, it shifts all the risk on our side of the table. So our CBA negotiations, purchasing of equipment and those kinds of things, we can't come back to you to ask for increases if those outstrip that CPI increase. And so we think it's a good deal and a good partnership that'll continue to move forward in the future. And as was mentioned before, there's a lot of costs involved with the RATA group, but that's not really directly related to that CPI increase or that detail rate review.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We have Councilmember Sparks with a question.
Thank you. Just two questions. One, would it be possible to just make sure to reopen the question of the electric truck at some point during this, if we were to approve this contract at some point during it? Because a lot can change in terms of pricing and availability in 12 years. So it could be that becomes more feasible at some point in the future. And then second question, I'm wondering, do we still have somebody from R3 here who could address the rationale between going 1% over CPI? I think that's a big ask for our residents to just bake in that we're definitely going to have rate increases over inflation, as long as inflation's under 4%, definitely baking in increases over inflation for a pretty long period of time. So I'd like to be able to go back to our residents and explain why that's necessary. Thank you.
Yes, so just to speak on that, the CPI typically, even with the non-70% of the CPI, would not keep up with the inflationary cost to Recology as it lies in the present day, mostly because of the way the indices are utilized. And so this is not like a standard waste, sewer, trash indices that is used, which has a little bit higher inflationary weight for fuel, trucks, truck repair, things like that. So, and then also the willingness from Recology to provide that 5% cap on the rates was something that was an additional benefit to the ratepayers, just to control those costs and keep that RRI below that 5% ongoing.
I'm sorry, just a little clarification. You're saying that the inflationary index that we're using isn't really accurate for the mix of operational expenses that a garbage collection company has? And if that's the case, is there a better index that could be used, or I'm just wondering?
Yeah, and actually, yeah, sorry. It was one of the indexes that actually was part of the draft amendment was a water sewer trash index, and it did have it was annually adjusted. So that was two factors that have a little bit more variability in them. So that was one of the reasons why we decided to stick with the current CPI index and then have that inflationary 1% addition.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this other index? And is it something that we should be looking at as we go through this in the future? Replacing it?
Yeah, it could be something, but one of the things was the timeline as far as trying to get this amendment in front of you. And I think that Recology was willing to stick with the current one that was still being used. But yes, essentially, one of those may more accurately represent the cost to a waste hauler.
And is it typically higher?
Yes, it is typically a little bit higher. And then the other component of it is that it's annually adjusted or seasonally adjusted. So there's opportunities to amend those CPI. The Bureau of Labor Statistics can amend those going back up to 5 years. So it does just create more potential for calculation errors and stuff moving forward.
And could you just give us some sense of the difference, say, for the last couple of years between that index and this index? Do you?
I cannot off the top of my head, but
Okay.
But honestly, Recology may have a good idea of what that might be.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
I just was curious. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions?
I just had a quick, going back to the question about the electric truck. I don't know if somebody on staff could respond to that.
Sure. So one of the things, assuming that we move forward with the amendment tonight, one of the things that the ad hoc would continue to work on is the overall restructuring of the agreement. I talked earlier about language, but another element that I didn't mention, but I think I put in the staff report, was that we were also considering looking at the overall rate structure as well. So in other words, from an operational standpoint, from Recology's standpoint, there's a total revenue requirement to run their operation. How it's split up, commercial or non-residential versus residential, and even within those two kind of categories, how it's allocated to different can sizes or different bin sizes. That's something that I think is worth at least the ad hoc looking at and deciding if there's more, better ways to achieve policy goals through that mix. So it's a long, circuitous way of saying that yes, we could. It would come with a rate implication, but we'd still be working on the franchise agreement and plan to come back, in the next 6 months with some additional amendments, and that could potentially be one of them if the council wants to continue to explore the cost of an electric vehicle. And even after that, there's always the opportunity, I suppose, down the road, as maybe they become more mainstream. We could also continue to look at. Nothing closes off that opportunity. It just means that we'd have to stay engaged with Recology on the cost of those.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll go to public comment then, and let's go to online first.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon if you'd like to make a public comment. Seeing no hands on Zoom.
Okay, we'll bring it back in the room. Anyone in the room want to make public comment? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus and council. I just want to thank the city of Cotati for the opportunity to discuss this extension. We really appreciate our partnership. We like to work hand in glove with the city. I want to thank Damien and R3 for all their hard work in negotiating this, and I appreciate your comments and questions regarding electric trucks. It is something we're looking into. We've tested one here in the cities of Healdsburg. We have 2 running in the city of Issaquah up north. They are a lot more expensive. So they're about $1.2 million versus about $500,000 roughly 500,000 for a diesel truck. And it's kind of a question too of how well do they work in the long term, like a 10-year. The industry hasn't really answered that question because they haven't really been around that long. So kind of smaller communities where you only have 2 or 3 trucks or 4 trucks to rely on, it's a little bit higher risk in those situations. But certainly we're always willing to speak and talk about it with the city. And again, I just want to thank you for your partnership. And if you have additional questions, happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments to staff other than what we've discussed before?
I just thought I wanted to question that the 10-year extension with an option for an additional 5-year extension, is that a mutually agreed upon option, or one of us has the option?
Believe the part you're referring to be mutually agreed. Let me look.
Sorry, what? It's not our call, like triggered by us, or? Anybody know?
Yeah.
It's in the. Yeah, it says it in the R3 report that there's an option for a 5-year renewal. I'm just curious how that option gets triggered.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, it's not in the amendment, so
Okay.
that might have been just a discontinuity between the memo and
Okay, maybe
because
that
it was discussed at one point.
didn't end up in the final
Yeah.
agreement? Okay. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, given the fixed increases for the next 5 years and then CPI plus 1% from then out with restrictions on reopening the rates, I'm good with going forward, as painful as it's going to be.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, anyone want to make a motion on page 121?
I make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving an amended agreement and term extension with Recology for the solid waste franchise.
Second.
Okay, all approve?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Okay, with that, we move to land acknowledgement, pledge of allegiance. So if you can just stand with us, please, for land acknowledgement. The City of Catayu recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land that we are on. And now, pledge of allegiance. Thank you. Thank you. Now we're moving on to the city manager's report and council member reports. And we'll start with city manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Council. So the Laguna Pathway project should have started this week. So you see some construction out there if you head on out. And this Thursday, just a reminder, we have our Sunflower Park ribbon cutting and grand reopening ceremony to celebrate the new upgrades and the additions to the park. We're starting at 3 p.m. and we'll end by no later than 5 p.m. So come check out the new park amenities, enjoy some light refreshments, and meet the artist behind the community mural. The parking lot's small. Just a reminder, the parking lot's small out there, so it might be full. And if it is, you may have to park at the smart parking lot and just walk down. It's not too far away, unless you happen to know someone that lives at Sunflower, but like the Sunflower HOA. And this Saturday is our weekly grown flower sale at the Veranda Floody Ranch between 10 and noon. Stop by and see the flower garden and enjoy some fresh herbal tea. Coming the first weekend of June is the first free compost weekend at the Veranda Floody Ranch, as well as the volunteer day. And then the free compost is available from 10 a.m. to noon on Saturday, June 6th and Sunday, June 7th. And the volunteer day is on Saturday, the 6th from 10 to noon. Also, coming in June is the first summer movie at the park on June 12th, where we will show Goat on the giant blow-up screen. We're also still taking registration for our summer camps, including Camp Katati, Farm Camp, Lego Camp, and Theater Camp. And then there's more information, of course, on the website for all of this. And it's a shorter report tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we'll go to city council reports. Anyone want to start? Nothing to report? Okay.
The Sonoma County Legislative Committee did not meet because of lack of quorum on the 15th of May. And just again to call out the June 11th, 11 a.m., the Pride flag ceremony out front.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on May 20th, I attended the Marin Sonoma Mosquito and Vector Control District meeting, and we were having some difficulties getting a quorum, which we finally did get a quorum, and were able to quickly pass a couple of items for the assessments, and then we lost quorum. So we had some reports of the budget and thing, but nobody could ask any questions, nobody could do anything because we didn't have quorum. So that was interesting, to say the least. And then on May 21st, I attended the Zerway Sonoma meeting. And the most important thing that happened there was they did a work plan progress report, and it is really pretty incredible and amazing, and I wish I had a long time to be able to let you guys know everything that's done, but I will have Damien send a copy of the report to you guys, because it's a very small staff, and it's pretty incredible, just the amount of things that they do and the amount of waste that they keep out of the landfill, and just all the programs that they have, and they're always like looking for new things. So I think it's important for this report to be on our website and for the council to have it, because it really is incredible what Sonoma County is doing. And so many of the counties actually look to Sonoma County because we're a leader in that effort. And then lastly, Friday night, I attended the Rotary Salute to the Community, and Officer Ryan Sullivan was awarded there, and Dolly was there, and she was a very good girl, and she was very, very popular. But I was proud to be able to attend, to be there for our officer, and it was pretty incredible. I guess this is the second year they said they did it, but the scholarships that Rotary gave for all the students, it was pretty incredible. They brought all of the students up on the stage, and one by one, they kind of said what each of the students were awarded with. And boy, we have some pretty talented kids in our community, and they're really going places, so that was interesting. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have two items to report on. The first one is May 15th, which I couldn't make it, but I got the notes for the mayor's board meeting that they had. And the discussion was mainly on the HR1 impacts, which we thought were bad, are actually worse now. So major drastic reductions in access to Medi-Cal and CalFresh SNAP food assistance. And also, it's kind of chaos by design. What they're looking at is, as a strategy, is to continue to keep people on Medi-Cal and CalFresh by hiring some additional eligibility workers that can keep people on receiving the benefits. And there's also a work requirement. So they're estimating that they're going to hire maybe about 40 or 50 new eligibility workers, because also the time frame for recertification has increased. It used to be every year, and now they have to recertify every 6 months. So it's going to increase a lot of the work for the Human Services Department eligibility workers. They were thinking about they were going to have maybe 11,000 people maybe lose Medi-Cal. Now they're looking at potentially 25,000 people. So they're looking at, that's going to be higher unfunded emergency room visits and overburdened ER capacity. So they're looking, because the county is obligated, since we do not have a hospital, to provide medically indigent care. So they'll be working with healthcare centers to provide directly funding to them, so they can provide that CMSP, which is the County Medical Service Plan, which is just a basic of basic type services that the county is mandated under welfare institution codes to provide. Also, the food bank has indicated that they're looking at maybe 30% people losing benefits, CalFresh benefits. So that's going to be an estimated loss of 1.4 million monthly in food benefits. So the food bank is looking at maybe needing like 2.5 to 5 million annually as an increase to help support the food insecurity that will be happening. So they're going to be monitoring as these changes roll out the next 6 months to a year to see what else can be done, but it's going to be pretty drastic. So I'm glad that we're increasing our food production at the Ronda Fidelity Ranch to at least help. But that's from the mayor's board meeting, the HR1 impacts. I also went to attended the homeless coordination meeting on May 19th, and that also has also some cuts where not all the applications of people that applied for the NOFA process and even prior recipients will not be funded this time. There is a permanent supportive housing in Sebastopol, which is St. Vincent project that started before Tibbetts had moved on, that they're going to give it like a 1 or 2 month grace period and continue with that work as they look for a new director, interim director. Let's see. So they're looking at, how much cuts I think they're looking at? I think it was 50% cuts to a lot of the programs. So there's a lot of changes coming. They did discuss, which there'll be a phone call to Runner Park regarding Labatt Landing. There was some home key funding, and they said that there was like a handshake deal that they had done with Labatt, but they're looking at combining some monies of $1.6 million per year for both Labatt and another project. So they'll be reaching out to Marcella and the city manager over at Runner Park for that, because they want to follow through on the commitment for that project. Let's see. The state has cut mobile crisis funds through Medi-Cal, so that's some cuts that are coming as well. Anyway, I don't know if I want to keep going on with this, but there's a lot of cuts through homeless. So we'll see. There's a meeting coming up this week, so we'll have more information at the next meeting. So that's what I have on my report, the 2 meetings that I went to. The next item we have was there any information received after the agenda was posted?
There was not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll end the meeting at 7:52 p.m. Okay, thank you. Good night.